Saturn Cube Theory Explained. Part 10. The Exit Strategy, the New Earth, and the Life Outside the Grid. Every series like this has to earn its ending, because it is easy to stir people up. It is easy to leave them with dread. It is easy to leave them with questions that make them stare at the ceiling at night. But if the Saturn Cube Theory is going to mean anything beyond entertainment, it has to offer an exit strategy. Not an escape plan where you run away to the woods and never pay bills again. A real exit strategy, an inner exit, a spiritual exit, a way of living that is no longer powered by the cage. This is part 10. This is where the story has to land. Because at some point the viewer needs to hear something that does not feed fear, something that feeds strength. So let us recap the whole arc before we step into the exit. In part 1, you learn to see Saturn as symbol, time, restriction, control. In part 2, you learned the cube can unfold into a cross, and you treated the cross as the breaking of containment. In part 3, you explored Saturn as the god of this world. In part 4, you explored the moon, memory, and the idea of looping. In part 5, you explored the clock, the system, and the cage of modern life. In part 8, you explored the war for attention. In part 9, you explored the false light and spiritual ego. Now in part 10, we answer one question. What does freedom look like in this mythic framework? Because freedom is not only the absence of chains, freedom is the presence of something else, a different master, a different frequency, a different center. In this symbolic worldview, the cube is the system of containment, and the system's main weapon is fragmentation, fragmented attention, fragmented identity, fragmented community, fragmented spirituality. So the exit strategy has to be integration. Making yourself whole again. Because a whole person is less controllable. A whole person cannot be easily harvested. A whole person does not need constant distraction. A whole person does not need constant drama. A whole person can sit in silence and still feel alive. That is rare, that is revolutionary. So what is the exit strategy? It has 3 layers. The first is spiritual. The second is psychological. The third is practical. Let us start with the spiritual layer, because that is the heart of this entire series. The spiritual exit is the shift from fear-based reality to love-based reality. That sounds like a slogan until you understand what it actually means. Fear-based reality is when your nervous system is always scanning for threats. You do not live, you manage. You are always waiting for the next shoe to drop. You are always bracing. Love-based reality is when you are anchored, not naive, not blind. Anchored. Love-based reality is when you can look at darkness without becoming darkness. You can see corruption without becoming consumed by it. You can name control without losing your compassion. In Christian language, this is the difference between living under law and living under grace. Law is structure. Law is measurement. Law is karma. Law is Saturn. Grace is the interruption. Grace is the opening of the cage. Grace is not permission to be careless. Grace is the revelation that you are not saved by performance. You are saved by union with the true source. So if you want to interpret the cross as the cube unfolded, then grace is what pours out of that opening. Grace is what breaks the logic of containment. Because the cage says earn your worth. Grace says your worth is given. The cage says you are what you produce. Grace says you are what you are. The cage says you must be perfect to be safe. Grace says you can be real and still be held. That is the spiritual exit. It is not just believing something, it is shifting what you are powered by. If you are powered by fear, you are in the cage. If you are powered by love, you are leaving the cage. Now the psychological exit. The psychological exit is reclaiming your inner authority. This is where the series becomes blunt. If the system can program you through attention, then your first act of liberation is to become conscious of your own patterns. Not the patterns in the sky, the patterns in you. What hooks you? What triggers you? What makes you spiral? What makes you numb? What makes you rage? Because the system does not need to invent chains. It can simply use the chains already inside you. Unhealed wounds, trauma responses, shame, addiction to validation, fear of being alone, fear of being wrong. If you want to leave the cube, you have to face the inner grid. The inner grid is the set of loops you live inside. The loop of doom scrolling, the loop of comparing yourself, the loop of perfectionism, the loop of overthinking, the loop of distrust, the loop of always needing more information. The exit strategy is to break loops, not by willpower alone, by replacing them, because every loop exists to meet a need for safety, a need for certainty, a need for belonging, a need for control. So you do not break loops by shame, you break loops by meeting the need in a healthier way. That is the psychological exit. Now the practical exit. This is the part that makes the series useful, because practical changes turn mythology into reality. If the cage is built out of modern life, then small changes are bolts loosened in the bars. So here are the practical exit moves in the language of this series. First, reclaim sacred time. Saturn is time. The system uses time as a whip. Deadlines, schedules, always behind. So the rebellion is to claim one slice of time that is not owned. A small daily ritual, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, no phone, no feed, just silence, prayer, journaling, breath, nature, scripture, whatever connects you to the true source. This is not self-help. This is spiritual warfare, because the system cannot harvest you in that space. Second, reclaim the body. In this series, the cube is matter as prison, but matter can also be temple. So you reclaim the body by returning to it. Walk, stretch, move, eat with presence, sleep with respect, touch grass, literally, because the system loves when you're a floating head on a screen. A floating head is easy to steer, a grounded body is harder to manipulate. Third, reclaim community. The system fragments people, the cube isolates, so the rebellion is real connection. Not parasocial connection, not comment section connection, real relationship. One friend you can tell the truth to, one person you can pray with, one person you can laugh with, because isolation breeds paranoia, connection breeds sanity. Fourth, reclaim the sacred. Not in the sense of joining a tribe and attacking other tribes, in the sense of making your home a place where the sacred is allowed. Light a candle, read something holy, play music that heals you, bless your food, pray over your children, speak gratitude out loud. The cage hates gratitude because gratitude breaks the need to consume. Fifth, reclaim attention. This is the simplest and hardest. Choose your inputs. The system is built on inputs. If you feed yourself fear all day, you will live in fear. If you feed yourself beauty, truth, prayer, and purpose, you will live differently. So the exit strategy includes a rule. Do not consume more darkness than you can transmute. If you cannot transmute it, it will poison you. That does not mean you ignore reality. It means you respect your limits. You honor your nervous system, because a fried nervous system is how the system wins. Now here is the most important point of part 10. The exit strategy is not just personal, it is collective. A person leaving the cage is powerful, but a community leaving the cage is dangerous to the cage, because the cage depends on your participation, not your belief. Your participation, your attention, your labor, your obedience. So when people reclaim time, body, community, and sacredness, the system loses power, not because of one grand event, because of a million small refusals, a million people choosing to be present, a million people choosing to build real life again, a million people choosing love over fear. So in the language of this series, what is the life outside the grid? It is not a utopia. It is not perfect. It is not naive. It is a life that is anchored. A life where you can notice symbols without becoming obsessed. A life where you can name darkness without becoming contaminated. A life where you can live in the world without being owned by the world. That is the meaning of escape, not leaving the planet, leaving the program. And this is where you can end part 10 with a final image. Saturn in the sky, silent, the cube in the mind, opening, the cross not as decoration but as a doorway, and a person not panicking, not spiraling, not worshiping the system, a person returning to source. Because in the end, the most radical conspiracy is this. What if the cage survives because you believe you cannot leave it? What if the bars are partly psychological? What if the exit has been in front of you the whole time, not as a secret code, as a way of being? And that is where the series ends, in a calm that does not feel like sedation, a calm that feels like power. The cube can be noticed, the grid can be named, but the soul does not have to live inside it. And if the theory is true in any sense at all, this is the only move that matters. Stop feeding the cage, start feeding the life. That is the exit strategy, that is the new earth, and that is the life outside the grid.